Hi, I'm Shaurya Thapa of Borrowing Tape, and today I'm joined with Benjamin Barfoot, the writer and director of the 2024 horror drama Daddy's Head. Welcome, Benjamin. And Benjamin, firstly, like before I get into your film, I want to discuss the title of your film because people who would have no context, they might, end up thinking that is this title supposed to be provocative or is it peculiar intentionally? So, what's the story behind the title Daddy's Head? Was it always in your mind or did it have another working title initially?
No, it was that. It was
Yeah.
Daddy's Head. It's been an amusing experience to see people's reaction over the time of that title because, if you've seen the film, it's essentially just a literal title, right? Daddy's
Yeah.
Head. I mean, I couldn't be more literal, really. But for whatever reason, everyone seems to have put extra connotations to the title, and then actually me realizing that over time. I mean, obviously there was a slight punk, maybe a slight. I wasn't just a literal title; it was a slight punk element. I like the way it kind of sounded slightly. Anyway, it was kind of like it's just a little bit punky, kind of weird. Um, but it actually, I think, towards the end of making the film, I started looking for a new title because even the actress who Julia Brown, who plays Laura, remember doing my first sort of read through with her, and she was like, "So the title," and I was like, like, so, and then, but I tried to find other titles, and what I realized was that whether you love it or hate it or like it or think it's weird or you're fine with it, you remember
Yeah.
it. So I was like, well, I'm
Yeah.
sticking with it then.
That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget the title. So,
Well, exactly, right?
yeah. So your film is about a young boy, Isaac, who is grieving the loss of his father, and then he starts witnessing supernatural phenomenon. But personal loss, like stories around personal loss and tragedies, they aren't new to horror. And as of late, after films like A Ghost Story or Hereditary, that trope is being reinterpreted for modern audiences. But while directing Daddy's Head, how did you consciously try to avoid, familiar horror cliches?
Well, I mean, I came up with this story. I've noticed some people have talked about, they talk Babadook and they've talked this or that. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is, when you read those things, you're like, I mean, I came up with this story long before those films ever came out. So when people are like, "Oh, he's obviously ripping him off," and I'm like, "Well, I'm obviously not because I didn't, I wrote that probably 5 or 10 years before that movie." So I don't, I'm not trying for anything more than something that freaks me out or scares me or I get a feeling or an emotion from. And I suppose the easiest answer would probably be like if I saw something in my head that I was doing that felt like a trope or it felt like I'd seen it before, I'd bin it in my head. I wouldn't and I do that. Like I'll play the cinema in my head plays and I watch certain things and I've had ideas where I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I'll sit there for a bit and think about it and be like, nah, it's just too like that, isn't it? So, or so yeah, I'm hopeful what's happening really is the filter system in my head, is stopping me from of trying to reinvent things organically in my mind to make me get a strong feeling in my head.
But were there any horror films or non-horror films that served as inspiration for Daddy's Head?
Yeah, for sure. Under the Skin is definitely a film that I loved, and I just loved the tone of it, and I love the feel of it. Really stuck with me, and I don't know whether anyone's sort of ever tried to say Under the Skin as a horror, but it's to me, I think it's very much landing in horror. Um, and then Alien as well, because Alien just if you sort of look at Daddy's Head, you've
Yeah.
got this woman, long corridors, something's moving around. Um, just some of those aspects were probably playing there. A little bit of Exorcist in that a mother watching a child, um, and watching is this child kind of going crazy or not. So those are probably, I'd say, like those are the three strongest. When I look, I'm like, I can see where my references are.
I did read that you were just 12 years old when your parents divorced, and while Isaac is 11 years old and he's facing another issue like the death of his father, Daddy's head still delves into, themes like the breakdown of a family and the
Hmm.
emotional aftermath. So, but while directing Daddy's head, was it like ever a triggering or rather a healing experience for you?
I think it was, yeah, absolutely was. It really was. I mean, it will always, how I feel about this film will always be much more dear to me than anyone will ever sort of realize, because it was cathartic, it was enlightening, it was a challenge, all sorts of things. It was also me awakening into probably more the type of filmmaker that I am, in that you know, I I had organically managed to put in my own personal emotions around something that I was also trying to make as an entertaining piece of cinema, and how that those sort of two things came together and had molded, and my brain had just done it naturally. It had done it by itself, and I hadn't noticed what it was actually doing. It was putting elements of myself into a film. And so I'm not sure I'm fully answering your question, but yeah, it was a Daddy's Head will always be, it will be like day one for me in many ways, of so many things of my own personal life and my own, and filmmaking.
So clearly, Daddy's Head was a serious project for you. But what's ironic is that the first film that you made was Double Date, which was a horror comedy. Now that came out way back in 2017. So how's the journey been since then? Like, transitioning from horror comedy to full-blown horror, and so many years after your debut film, like how's the experience been?
um Brutal. uh Yeah, brutal. Been really hard. Been really tough. British filmmaking's really, really tough. It's really difficult. And uh, I have really, everything comes down to a torchbearer to a degree, which is Matt Wilkinson. Who runs Stigma Films and has made both my movies, production company and producer. Because it was Matt who basically saw Double Date, loved it, and we kind of got a nation. I reviewed okay on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics. I I got a nationwide cinema release. I was kind of like, I've done it. I've done it. I've done the thing where people make movies. I've done it. And then I saw what you did there, and that was amazing. Like, I love that movie, um, and I want to make your next film. And he basically stuck by me for three, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 6 years. And there were a bunch of ideas that I were doing around that weren't horror. That I had one idea that was quite a political war story, about this person I knew, but I ended up not doing it because it got made into a Hollywood movie. And so yeah, I've just been up and down, and really going into horror again was just an easy thing for Matt to be like, I can get you some money if you do a horror, because you're not getting too out of your lane here, but I can move you over. You're not trying to do like a period drama suddenly. I can get you into it. And then so, obviously it becomes organic. You're like, okay, I've got to go that way. So
But would you venture into non-horror projects after Daddy's Head now?
would I?
Yeah, would you
Would I do
venture,
another one?
or would you do another horror or another non-horror after Daddy's Head?
Well, I've got one that I want to do at the moment, which is I'd say it's like a psychological. It's more psychological thriller,
Okay.
cerebral drama. The dramas are, not as strong as this. It's psychological thriller slash horror drama. It's kind of, let's see. But yeah, I have another script, and it's like I'm not going to get out of my lane too much on my next one, because I want to get more firepower because I had to do a lot of I had to strip out a lot of the ideas that I had for Daddy's Head. Like a lot of stuff has been removed, and I think I can make a much stronger film, taking on board some of the things that I was trying to do, and increase those more, but with maybe a bit of American money. That's the idea.
Right. One final question for you is that one of the most impressive performances in Daddy's Head was by Rupert Turnbull, who plays the grieving boy Isaac. How
Mm.
challenging was it to direct a serious movie about grief and loss with a particularly young actor like Rupert?
Well, Rupert made it incredibly easy. I mean, he really did, because people have asked about him now a bit, and it's brought it all back to me. And I realized how lucky I was with him, and I cast him when he was 9, um,
Right.
and I held on to him for 3 years. So and I that was actually luckily I was aging the character as the years passed, developing the film, because I realized the older the boy got, it was started dawning on me that I was like, actually, if he's a bit older, he's more threatening to Laura, the character Laura. So I held on to Rupert the whole time, but when he came to his first casting, he walked in the room and he was almost slightly directing me a little bit. He had really strong ideas about what he wanted, but in this very calm, gentle way, he would just be like, "Maybe I should be stood here. You should be there. You should do this." And you could just see the boy had such a strong intellect. And then when I finally was on set with him, I'd shown him like Leonardo DiCaprio scenes. I'd shown like young Leonardo DiCaprio, and tried to talk to him about, look at how much manifestation and energy this man, or as a young man, was putting into his work. It's huge, like, and that's why he went on to be so successful. And so there are scenes where you see him where he's sort of crying in front of the structure for his father. Like, I look at him, and that is him just absolutely just listening to everything I say, going away quietly, very intelligent young man, and calling upon a lot of that energy and emotional feeling inside him, and just blasting it out. And I'm not having to do too much, which is the best moment for a director.